in before we get on to the facilitator and the panel, which is really why we know everybody's here today. So I did want to say just thank you for everyone for being here this morning, and we're really excited about this topic as we talk about it ourselves at Women United and within our personal and professional development committee, and as well in our personal and professional lives with friends and colleagues and others and family. So important stuff going on here. As I said, I'm Amy Ackerman. I am the co-chair of the Women United Personal and Professional Development Committee, and I am a personal and leadership coach and organizational consultant with Core Endeavors. I will kick things off here this morning, and then I'm going to hand the program to Tiffany Kenny, and she will help us move into our topic at hand and introduce the panel in more detail. A little bit of information here. Excuse me. We are bringing all of you amazing women here in Dane County and otherwise to continue to learn from one another. From those of you who are new to the group, Women United is an affinity group within United Way and is a global force of over 70,000 women making change in their local communities. Here at United Way of Dane County, Women United is over 1,000 members strong, and we keep growing after each one of these events and other interactions. So please consider joining if you aren't already. It's free and it's a lot of fun. Our local efforts as a women's affinity group at United Way of Dane County started in 2006 when about 20 women saw a need in the community and took action. After learning about the achievement gap, these 20 women gave $1,500 to support the Elementary Schools of Hope program, providing reading tutoring to elementary students in our community. Women United is so proud of this history, and we continue to advocate for Elementary Schools of Hope and many other important education initiatives in Dane County and surrounding area. Women United in Dane County's commitment to education is twofold: education of youth and personal and professional development for women. We aim to provide thoughtful time and space for members and guests to set and achieve personal and professional goals while building a support network of women who care deeply about the community. I'm so excited that we'll be able to spend the next hour and a half being inspired by a panel of amazing women leaders in our community. We hope spending time with these women and each other on the call gives us all the motivation to re-energize and focus on achieving our goals individually and collectively. Our members are not only invested in our community and advocates for education, but also leaders growing in their career and fields, lifting other women up all along the way. And that's a big part of Women United, our lifting of each other and ourselves. Our amazing mentor panelists this morning are, in alphabetical order, Teresa Balsiger, the Vice President of Candidate Relations at Carix Consulting Group; Deborah Biddle, who leads the People Company LLC, a diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting, assessment, training, coaching, and practitioner certification firm; Stephanie Johnston, Assistant Vice President of Workforce Development at the Boys and Girls Club of Dane County; and Jamie Perez, owner of Beyond Words Productions. On behalf of Women United Council and Personal and Professional Development Committee, I would like to express a huge thank you to our mentors for sharing their time and expertise with us this morning. We are so grateful for you all being part of our community. Today's panel, as we switch into our topic at hand, is meant to help you think about your career goals and reflect on where you are in your journey to achieving them. Before we learn more about the panelists, let's take a few minutes for reflection. Let's do some career dreaming. Imagine that you could create your perfect career. I know sometimes that can be hard to get into that dream state, but settle yourself in and think about that perfect career. What are your role, or what is your title and responsibilities? Who are your coworkers? What are your surroundings, workload, and workflow? How are you encouraged and inspired to show up every day? How are you allowed to be? Spend several minutes dreaming and jot down what comes to your mind. This may draw upon current or past experiences or be completely new and different from anything that you have done before. We encourage you to dig deep and to expand your mind, get vulnerable with yourself, and put a couple of things to paper. And if you'd care to, please share in the chat the things that come to mind or that you're thinking about. Anyone care to share a couple of thoughts that come to mind? I can't see everyone, but if Molly or Carly, if there are people raising their hands, or, please raise your hand or feel free to type into the chat. No dreams? There we go. Learning new things often, not the same day twice. I think Allison is in a good career as she does consulting. And I can say from personal experience, consulting is never the same day twice. Work with a team that's supportive and has high standards for themselves and others. Absolutely. One of the reasons that I add in, how do you want to show up, is, we learned a lot during COVID that we need to be able to bring our whole selves to work and to life, and that there's such a blend. And so for many people, the ability to continue to be who they are and to have sort of their whole selves at the table is super important. And there's still some employers that aren't quite comfortable with that yet. All right, well, we'll get onto the panel, because clearly I believe that's why we're all here and what everybody's excited for. So we'll move on to that. And in getting ready for that, I'm going to introduce our facilitator, which is Tiffany Tom Kenny. Tiffany currently serves several clients in the Madison community, including the Madison Black Chamber of Commerce. She directs communications, helps create special events, drives publicity, and helps solidify operations. She previously worked for both the Madison Area Builders Association and Madison Magazine before opening her own marketing firm in 2012, promoting local restaurants, chefs, and food businesses. Yum, I bet there's some awesome stories in all of that. In 2015, Tiffany joined Madison's Central Business Improvement District to help promote special events. And in 2017, driven by a passion for the work to support the diverse local business downtown, she became the full-time executive director of the organization. While in that role, she created the signature Madison Night Market and Madison Wine Walks, along with many other retail-focused events. A family history in retail store operation, a Wisconsin kind of work hard ethic and experience at these local organizations, combined with over 20 years of history of live work and play in Madison, help guide her as she represents the unique businesses and organizations that make Madison great. I'm going to let her tell maybe a little bit more about her personal story and personal effects if she wants to, but please join me in welcoming Tiffany to our facilitation role.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the chance to spend some time with you this morning and to spend some time with some amazing panelists. I'm really looking forward to hearing their stories. I know a little bit about Jamie's and can't wait to hear more about Deborah and Teresa and Stephanie, and I'll tell you a little bit about them in a moment. First, I do just want to highlight that I don't know if you noticed the trend in my career path, but my first job was Madison Area Builders Association. I then went over to Madison Magazine. I then worked in downtown Madison for the Madison Central Business Improvement District. And now I'm over really digging in with the Madison Black Chamber of Commerce. So the word Madison needs to be in my job path, evidently. I'm not originally from Madison, but I did come here for UW, found lots of great friends, good community, and so much diversity. I came from a very small town in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. I'm Maybe you've gone to the Fireside Theater. Okay, so that's where Fort Atkinson is. And so Madison was the big city, you know. Now I've been here, it's not so big, but it's definitely a great diverse city with amazing women doing amazing things. There's some great guys doing things too, but you know. So let's go here. Let's talk a little bit about who our panelists are. I do know her, so I feel most comfortable introducing Jamie first. Jamie and I have crossed paths in media and all sorts of other fun events in the last couple of years. So let me read her bio for you. So Jamie is with Beyond Words Productions. Like all the other panelists, Jamie has faced life events with resiliency and creativity. She left her TV news job in November of 2021, a role she performed across 3 states for 6 years. And so you saw her on TV. That's how you know Jamie already. But she was getting sort of tired of not getting to cover the stories that she really wanted to tell. You know, she wanted to tell full-time these stories versus the news stories, and living on a little bit of a journalist salary. All those things are a little bit hard. So she took matters into her own hand. And in November of 2021, she started her own videography company, Beyond Words Productions. She's going to have some great joy, some great insights for us on her path to finding joy. Now, where's Stephanie? I've seen Stephanie before and had a chance to work with her also. It's amazing the work she's doing over at the Boys and Girls Club of Dane County. Stephanie has had a 15-year career in the construction industry, where women only make up 14% of the employees. So we're excited to see Stephanie taking over there. In her various roles, she saw a gap in knowledge of the vast careers in the construction industry. She decided to dedicate her life to helping young people explore and flourish within the construction industry. To this end, she is currently the Assistant Vice President of Workforce Development at the Boys and Girls Club of Dane County. And it's a new department within the organization and a brand new building, right, Stephanie? Yeah, yay, we'll talk about that, I'm sure. And so it's a brand new department within the organization, and they're focused over at the Boys and Girls Club on expanding opportunities for careers with sustainable wages for your family. And they're in the skilled trades, and we're serving underserved populations. So we're going to hear a lot of great things from Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie. All right. And then where's Teresa? There she is. Teresa Balsiger. She's with Carex Consulting Group. And Teresa has a talent and passion for finding top talent with the best opportunities in their fields. She's currently the Vice President of Candidate Relations at Carex Consulting Group. That group is a rapidly growing talent acquisition firm headquartered in Madison. So everybody connect with Teresa. Before that, she spent several years over at QTI, who many of you know as a really well-respected HR organization. And she was named in 2020 as one of InBusiness's 40 under 40. Awesome, Teresa. And she serves on all sorts of nonprofit boards. So we'll hear more from her shortly. And last but definitely not least, we've got Deborah. Hi, Deborah Biddle. She is a certified diversity professional. She's a certified talent management consultant, and she is a sought after trainer and speaker. So we are very lucky to have her here today. She founded the People Company Consulting Group in 2015. She founded it to help organizations rethink and redo the ways they engage with people and the ways they make decisions. In that work, she's worked with organizations big and small across the US and internationally. So she's got all sorts of insights for us. She's going to provide some insights into organization trends and culture trends, and how do we just continue to create the most creative, inclusive roles and workplaces we can create. So that is our panel. We are very excited. Let's do one of these round of applause for them. All right, yay. And then let's get started. Huh? Are you ready, my friends? All right. Let's go ahead, Teresa. I'm going to start with you. You're unmuted, so you get to go first. And I'm going to ask you a little bit to tell us about your career story. What are some of the key decisions you've made? Maybe some of the roadblocks you've encountered? Well, tell us a little about your career story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take you back a little bit further and tell you that, when I started thinking in high school of what I wanted to do with my life, the big highlight was help people. right? And I think I hear that from a lot of individuals as they continue their careers. I just want to help people. And at that time in my journey, helping people meant going into healthcare for sure. And I took every anatomy and physiology class and medical terminology, and that was my jam. And I was going to have this great medical career. And then I went and job shadowed, and it took about an hour for me to realize that was not the path that I needed to be on. And so I was really grateful for that experience, because I could have gone down very deep into a lane that ultimately wasn't going to bring me joy. So at that moment, pivoted, took some new coursework, and started in business at the recommendation of my grandmother. And I always sort of thought, business, no, that's boring, that's stuffy. It's not a place where I see myself. I'm soft. I'm not, corporate-y. And then I realized that there was this whole lane within business and business itself that's actually quite human. And so went into HR and took that path and got my degree in business and HR. And then since then, so QTI, as you had mentioned, is such a well-known entity in the Madison market, and had an opportunity there to start. And I sort of thought, okay, that'll be my 2-year plan, right? Like I'll go get my 2 years of experience and then I'll be off and I'll be climbing a corporate ladder. And I stayed there for 11 years. And the reasons I stayed was that I had incredible mentors. I got to continue to learn and grow and be challenged and make mistakes and feel supported. And then more recently, I guess it's been 5 years now, I have met Rachel Neal, the founder of CareX, and she wanted to do recruiting and HR in a little bit of a different way. And it really spoke to me. And I also was at that point in my career where I just needed more challenge. I needed more things that scared me. And joining a startup was very scary. That definitely filled that bucket and gave me some opportunities to build and lead a team, which I was really hungry to do. So that's where I'm at now.
Awesome. What a journey. We all have a path. Let's hear a little bit about Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie, what was your path? How did you end up where you are and the impact you are making over at the Boys and Girls Club? Tell us some about it.
Yeah, so it's been quite the journey. Actually, in high school, I wanted to pursue a career actually I was specifically looking for media arts and animation. So I was really into art, building stuff with my hands, whether it was digitally or, physically. And I actually had a kid at a really young age of 20, and I just couldn't afford college anymore. I'm going to art school and then providing for my son. And I said, okay, I need to get a real career. Not that that isn't a career, but a career that I know for sure I can provide for my family. And I was looking through the newspaper and I found a job ad that paid pretty well, actually a lot better than some of the other positions I've held. And it was with an electrical contractor. And I'm like, well, I don't know anything about construction, but let me give this a try. And for some reason, they saw something in me. And so I kind of started off as an administrative assistant, really taking on receptionist duties. I was like, okay, this is, I'm providing for my family. This is great. But I still wasn't sure, what am I doing here sitting at this front desk? This is not the career path I thought I was going to go. And so I started asking questions. I started going to people's offices and saying hey, can you tell me what does this mean? What are you doing? Can you show me how to do it? And then they were like, okay, at first they were unsure. I was the only woman there in the entire organization of 200 men. And in the construction industry at that time, there just really wasn't women. And so they weren't really sure what was Stephanie's place here in this office. Was it just to make some coffee? And I definitely wasn't that person who was like, yeah, I just want to make coffee and take phone calls. No, I want to do something. So they're like, okay, see, she's got some initiative, and really started taking on some additional responsibilities and moved up into project manager assistant. I really enjoyed being part of a team and working on projects with the field staff, with different subcontractors, with the general contractor. And I kept aspiring, okay, I want to keep growing, give me more. But unfortunately, within that organization, they're like, okay, well, in order to become a lead project manager, you actually need field experience, which makes sense in electrical industry. You do kind of need to know some of the technicalities of it. And so I said, well, that's not going to stop me here, right? I'm going to figure out a way around that loophole because I can't go back like, 10 steps. I still have, at that point, I had a bigger family then. And what I did is I started taking classes at MATC in project management. I started taking some online courses and really looking at getting some certifications, and found a career with a general contractor where they would provide additional opportunities for me to continue to grow in my career. And super grateful that, that electrical contractor took a chance on me. I spent 9 years there, moving up into project management, and just loved the industry and found that there's so much creativity needed in construction that it was something I wouldn't even thought that would excite me. But now, I think of it, I call it the art of construction, right? We're still building stuff. We're still putting things together. You can visually see what we created. And then as I kind of switched into this new career where I was working for a general contractor, I actually had a lot more opportunities, maybe too many, to the point where my supervisor was really, having check-ins with me and being like, let's find your passion, like, let's find your direction. And I found my passion was working with people. He gave me an opportunity to kind of take a lead on the training and employee development with the field staff. And I was like, this is amazing, because I never had anyone sit down with me and create a pathway. Like, where do you want to go? And then how do we get you there? What kind of skills do you have right now? How do we can continue to grow on them? And this really was very energizing. I mean, I just got so excited about doing this, not only for myself, but for everybody else in the organization. And I was like, well, it's great that I'm doing this for this smaller company, but I want to expand this because I see that this is not happening at other organizations, especially not in construction. And not for our youth, right? I had no idea really what I wanted to do. And so, now I'm here working at the Boys and Girls Club and really just doing exactly what I love, which is helping our youth kind of discover what is your passion. I get to do a lot of career exploration with them, help them develop their skills, and then create that pathway to whatever career it is that they want to go.
What an awesome journey, Stephanie. I love your phrase, art of construction. I was thinking sort of the same as you were talking. There is some art to construction. So cool. From artists, let's see, from paintbrush to hammer. I don't know what your journey's been there, but all right, Deborah, how about it? Tell us about what's been going on with you. What was your career journey like, and how did you come to form the People Company?
All right. If I go back like Teresa did to high school, I always wanted to sing, but I also wanted to have money. So I majored in finance in college and came out of college and went straight into corporate America. So I worked at Xerox and Motorola, at Abbott Labs, 3 behemoth companies, and worked my way up through. My very first job was in customer service, which I worked at for a year. And then I worked my way up to controller of an engineering division before I left corporate America to start my first entrepreneurial endeavor, which was a record label. And I produced 2 CDs and toured around singing and doing music for a while. And then I started my second company doing small business consulting. And then from there, took a little hiatus of sorts to raise my family. And then we relocated to Wisconsin. And at the time that I went full force back in, or sort of back into the workforce, my husband was transitioning into leaving corporate America into a ministry position. So I decided I would go back to work part-time, and I worked at a career transition company. And while I was there, I worked in client services and then became a talent management coach, 2 things I never thought I would do, because I am very much a numbers person, don't really like to engage that much with people in the touchy-feely. So when I started doing it, I shocked myself, and everyone who knew me thought it was hysterical. So that was that journey. And while I was there, I actually met Allison Cooley, who is on this call, and because she worked there for a short time. And through our conversation, she said, "Why are you here? Why are you doing this? Why don't you just start your own company? Why don't you? And so I did. I started the People Company, not intending to do diversity, equity, and inclusion work. I intended to do career transition work for young women who were young in their career, because I feel like those are the people who need it most and can't afford it, which wasn't a good business model because they can't afford it. So I did a little bit of that in the beginning, but really the pivotal thing for me was Allison encouraged me to apply to be a speaker at the Madison Nonprofit Day Conference. So I came up with an angle that I wanted to talk about, and that led me to my first diversity client. And that was 7 years ago. And that client is still my client to this day. And they were instrumental in me making the pivot from career transition work into diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And that's where I've been. I started my company and have worked really hard to make it a great, to position the company, position myself well in the marketplace to be able to do the work that I do.
That's a great story. We're going to need to figure out this, like how we get to hear you sing though. There's people in the chat. Molly says you really can sing.
Maybe I'll sing something later. I don't know. We'll see.
All right, we'll see how that works out. But I also loved hearing, Deborah, how Allison was there pushing you along. You had some friends pushing you along, and I bet you pushed people forward. Because as women, that's sort of one of the things I see us always doing. And so when Jamie started her new company, I thought, all right, Jamie, I'm going to get behind you and cheer you on. So why don't you tell us about your journey, Jamie? How'd you get to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so mine actually starts from childhood, and so I'm born and raised in Sacramento, California. So I'm a long way from home, and I've kind of everywhere I've moved has brought me further and further away. So I kind of grew up in a home where there was a lot of emotional trauma for me growing up. And so I got through a lot of my my depression and my mental health struggles by writing poetry. So through my love of writing, like I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I ended up, going to community college at first, until I sat down with a counselor and she was like, trying to help me decide on what to major in. And I was like, well, I don't really know what I want to do. She's like, well, what do you like to do? And I was like, well, I like to write. And she's like, okay, what do you like to write? I'm like, poetry, but I don't really want to make a career out of that. Like, that's just something that I do for me. Nobody ever like sees my poems really. It's just something like that I do therapeutically. And she's like, well, let's put you in some journalism classes because journalism involves writing and we'll see how you like it. So I ended up falling in love with the broadcast aspect of it. So I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism. I moved to LA to go to school there, graduated with bachelor's in broadcast journalism, and then got my first job at the ABC station in Sioux City, Iowa. And there I was an anchor, a producer, and an MMJ. And MMJ means multimedia journalist, which means I was doing every single thing on my own by myself every day, from finding the stories to pitching them to setting up the interviews, filming everything, editing everything, going on camera, and then writing up the web article to attach the video to every single day. I was there for 2 years, moved to Madison, Wisconsin, where I was essentially an MMJ for 4 years here. And I left for many reasons. One of them was because the last couple of years that I was doing news was through the pandemic. And given my history with mental health, that was not great for the road that I wanted to be on. I knew that my mental health journey was very important to me, and the news is obviously not a source of happy and positive information, despite the fact that those are really the stories that I gravitated towards, is pitching community impact and positive, heartfelt stories. It still was too few and far between, and I felt like even though I was pitching that stuff all the time to go and cover, it was a lot of times that where my ideas would get pushed to the back burner to cover something that involved more siren chasing, more crime, more politics. And that wasn't me. And I hated doing that. And, I would talk to people in the community that say, I don't watch the news. I don't watch the news. So I felt like a lot of the stories that I did, regardless of whether it was good news or bad news, people were not watching what I was doing. And so I just felt like, why am I putting my heart and soul into this field that is never going to love me back? So that was one of the reasons, the mental health aspect. And then the other reason was just the absolutely horrible salary that I was on. I mean, when you're in your early 20s, like the salary, everybody is not making money in their first job. I mean, you're entry level, like nobody's really making a paycheck. You're in your early 20s, so you don't really have like a ton of bills and responsibilities. And so at the start, it was really all like just kind of fun and getting my feet wet. But then as I got closer and closer to 30, I saw a lot of my friends, get through these milestones in their life, buying a house, going on vacations, having families, buying cars. And I'm like, I am not able to do that. And I'm like almost 30 years old. And that was really just like so crippling for me inside, that I was like, I'm working so hard and I feel like I'm never going to be able to retire on this. Like, I'm never going to be able to take time off. I'm always going to be at the bottom of the totem pole because of what I want to do, which is reporting, being out in the community. I didn't want to be an anchor. That was boring for me. So anyways, ultimately I decided to leave, and I actually didn't start my videography company right away, like a lot of people think. This is something that I don't really like share a lot to a lot of people. So Tiffany, I don't even know if you know this, but so I actually had another job that I left for, and it was basically this community forum based here in Madison that I helped start for a company that is based out of North Carolina. And it is essentially like people sign up for email newsletters to get information on all of the fun and positive things that are going on every day in Madison, new businesses, new restaurants that you can go support. So it's just positive information. There's no me on camera. There's no media involvement. Like, it was just like this email subscription. 2 days into me working there, I actually got an email from the attorney at my station that I worked at, threatening that if I didn't leave, they were going to sue me. And this actually happens a lot to people in who work in this field, but so often nothing happens. It's just kind of the big man flexing his muscles and trying to threaten people who leave. It's a scare tactic, essentially. So I didn't respond to it. And then a week later, that attorney followed up with me and was really aggressive in the email and said, if you do not respond to me, we are taking legal action. We are suing you. And so at this point, I'm getting a little nervous because they followed up. So I, with as little money as I had, I probably was able to save in 6 years as I worked in news, I was probably able to save $2,000 total. And so when I got this email, I went and talked to an attorney, and they said they wouldn't talk to me unless I forked out $500 for them. So that was about a fourth of my savings that I had just to talk to this attorney. And this attorney just told me, you should just go tell your new boss. Paid $500 for that. So I told my new boss, he's like, is this about like a non-compete? Do they think that we're in competition? And I was like, I think that's what they are saying. Yeah. And so he's like, let me talk to them. We'll figure it out. Don't worry. Like, we literally have hired TV news reporters in the middle of their contracts in other places that we are at, and nothing has happened. I promise you that you will keep your job. So I said, okay, cool. So a couple of weeks passed by. I'm working there for about a month at this point, and I got on a call with the CEO, who said they did not care what we had to say. We offered them free advertising and exclusive partnership. We told them what it is we do, and they did not care, and said that if we don't fire you today, we're going to sue both myself and the company. And so they're like, you're too new of an employee. Like, this would not hold up in court. But the problem is that, like, you don't have enough money to even take it to court. So they automatically win. So I lost my job that day. I worked there for about a month, lost my health insurance, lost everything. It was a very, very difficult month for me. And I didn't know what to do. I was afraid to apply for any other jobs because I was scared that the same thing was going to happen. They were going to find out that I was working in Madison, somewhere that was not there, and I would lose my job all over again. So my partner, who actually has his own business, was in the entrepreneurial mindset. And he was like, you're so good at sharing heartfelt stories. Like, there is a demand for this, regardless of what news implanted in your minds, that there's not a demand for positive storytelling. Like, there is, people like support you. You have a connection and a network in this community. Like, why don't you just start your own LLC and see what happens? So I did, because I had nothing else to lose. The first year that I was in business, I was still technically bound by my contract. And so I was so afraid to start this business because I was afraid they would try to take this away from me too. So I had no website, no social media. I told people out in the community, like the people that I told that this is what I'm doing now, I told them, please don't tell anybody that this is what I'm doing, which is exactly the opposite of what you want to do when you're starting a business. So the first year I ran my business in secret, so afraid that I was going to get caught for telling positive stories. And so anyways, that was the first year. I've been in business almost 2 years now. So now I just get to tell heartfelt and emotional stories full time. And, you know, I feel like success is the best revenge. And I feel like I've just been on the way up and trying to move past that. So that's where I'm at right now. And that's my roller coaster of a ride of how I got here.
Jamie, thank you for sharing all of that, though. I mean, that is quite a lot that has happened and gone through the last couple of years for you, and so kind of you to share that journey with everyone. We've all had some challenges and some struggles, and we're not really all good at talking about them. And I'm speaking personally, right? Not always great at sharing those stories. So thank you so much for taking us on that journey with you. Let's talk a little bit about that question of confidence and credibility. Remember that question, ladies? Let's think a little bit about that. How, when we don't have it, right? I see over here, success is the best revenge. It's in the chat, but I also think of the one, fake it till you make it a little bit, you know? So I don't know, Deborah, how about you? Let's talk a little bit about that. How do we demonstrate credibility or confidence, even if we don't know what we're doing? You know, what are some ideas or examples to share with the group about that thought?
Yeah, somebody told me a long time ago to teach what you know, no matter where you're starting out. And for me, when I started my diversity, equity, and inclusion company, I really did not know that much about the space, but I had some lived experiences that I could talk about from a practical point of view. And so even when I did that very first talk about inclusive fundraising, I talked about my own experience as a Black woman and as a Black child trying to raise money for a drill team that I was part of, and extrapolated that into experiences that I've had over the course of my life and how that could be useful to nonprofit organizations as well as for-profit organizations. And so one thing I would say is to teach what you know. The second thing I would say is be a constant learner. There is so much to learn. I think somebody said somewhere it takes 10,000 hours of learning to be an expert at anything. And so we all have a lot to do and to experience, to read, to study up on in order to be experts at whatever our field is. So don't be fooled by thinking that everybody else around you is an expert, because most of the time they're not. They just talk a good game. So take the time to learn, and learn in a way that works for you. You don't always need to have a degree. If you like doing certificate programs, online learning, going to conferences, reading books, listening to podcasts, talking to people, whatever it is, however you like to learn, make that a thing and go do it for yourself. And then I would say, learn from other people you know who are doing it well, who are already where you want to be. So whether it's people you watch from afar, whether that is an entertainer or some athlete or someone who you've never met, someone whose book you can read and learn from what they have shared, or someone who's in really close proximity to you in your own office, who is doing the thing that you want to do. Observe them and see what they're doing that's working. Talk to them, ask them for an hour of their time. If you are fortunate enough to be able to get them to mentor you or sponsor you, then carry on with that. But those are the things. And I would say, work hard at what you do know and be excellent at what it is you do have skill in, and that you already are aware of in terms of your own abilities and your own strategies for success.
I love that idea of, showcase what you do know, shine. When you've got something to shine with it, shine with it. So Stephanie, let's ask you that same question. Sounds like you kind of did have to fake it to make it a little bit, but now when we get to real certification and licensing and regulation in the construction industry, you do have to know some things. So tell us about that for you, Stephanie. How do you kind of, create that confidence and credibility, even if you're not totally sure what you're doing?
Well, I think credibility really happens when you're consistent from the inside and out. So a lot of that is being consistent about what you do, what you say, and then how you're thinking about things inside. So if you want to show confidence, you have to be confident inside. And so a lot of that's changing the narrative inside your own mind and making sure that it aligns with what you're saying. Because people can really pick up on how you're feeling by the way you say things. And so a lot of times you have to really work on yourself. And I've found, me personally, kind of getting confident is through curiosity. Because I like learning new things. And so that, if I'm able to ask questions, people can really see that I'm interested, that I want to know more things. And so what it looks like to you might be different, but just aligning, that consistency with your mind and your passions and your actions.
Awesome. I'm going to ask the other folks, Teresa and Jamie, did you have mentors? Let's talk about mentors and mentees. Teresa, let's go to you first. Have you thought about mentors? Have you been a mentor? Let's talk a little bit about that, because it's one thing we know we can learn from each other. We can definitely help each other grow and develop. So tell me a little about that from your perspective, Teresa. Oh, hold on. You're muted, my friend. Somehow you got muted. Let's unmute Teresa.
Yes.
There we go.
When I think about confidence, and that fake until you make it kind of mentality, I go back to my, again, early 20s, and I was sort of in this role that, I was a little bit nervous about as a little bit of a stretch role for me. And I had some early successes. I had some early wins, mostly attributed to what you mentioned about curiosity, right? I asked a ton of questions. I did my homework. I went online and learned everything I could that was online about my profession and about the industries that I was working in. And I did a lot of research. And then because I had a couple early successes, I came in with tons of confidence in some next engagements. But what was funny is that those were lucky, right? I got lucky. The first few clients I worked with were just kind and caring, and we were on the same page about things, and things just moved along really, really well. And then I had a couple really tricky ones. And so I lost that confidence immediately. It's like I worked 3 years to build it and gain it. And then suddenly it was completely gone. And I was like, what am I doing here? I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to be here. Someone else should do this. And I started to snowball. And my boss, you had asked about mentors, she was sort of a very casual mentor to me, right? We never called it that, but I've always found mentors very organically, or in my life, right? Not just at work, but in my life. Who can I go to when I just feel like things are rough, that I know will build me up, that I know will tell me the hard truths sometimes? Find those people, right? And so went to one of those people who was a former client, and I said, I don't know what I'm doing. And you seemed to support me. You seemed impressed with the work that I did. What am I doing wrong? And he introduced this idea, and I'll never forget it, was the meeting before the meeting. And I was like, well, what is that? Right. And he said, when you go into a meeting with a bunch of clients, and at that time I was working with board members, very influential, very powerful, mostly male, older gentlemen, right? He said, when you go into that meeting, it shouldn't be the first time that you're talking to those individuals. Pick a couple of people, make them be your cheerleaders, call them, ask them for some advice, ask them how you feel like things are going, how they feel like things are going. You're going to get some insight, and that conversation will be relationship building enough to build that credibility when you get into the room with everybody. And so I've done that now with external clients that we're working with, but I've also done it internally, right? If there's something I'm pitching the rest of my leadership team, I'm going to go to those 1 or 2 people that I know will probably help champion the same cause that I'm pushing on, and not only get their pushback and what they think might be pushback to uncover some of that, but also get them on board with what I am driving, so that, walking into that meeting, you've got confidence because there's at least one other person in that meeting that's going to sort of speak up and vouch for what you're saying as well. So lots of research, lots of meeting before the meeting, lots of mentor, asking them for their time, asking them a ton of good questions to try to derive, how you can build on your confidence.
I mean, I don't know that I really love more meetings, but I love the meeting before the meeting. I think that's such a great idea, Teresa. Thank you for sharing that with us. Jamie, how about you? Let's talk mentors and confidence. I think first of all, if you're going to be on camera, whew, there's got to be some confidence you found from somewhere and you pulled all that out. Tell us a little about confidence and maybe mentors and how those have played in your life.
Yeah. So confidence growing up for me was obviously very lacking just because of the emotional traumas that I dealt with and just all the unsureness in the path. But yeah, I mean, when I was in TV news, I mean, you have to appear confident on a camera because it is so easy to tell when somebody is not confident in their reporting. And like I looked so young when I first started. Like I looked like I was 12 when I first got my first job on camera. So like I actually had a hard time getting a job because I looked so young, and people were like, well, we don't want to like hire you. Like, you're great when you start talking, you're believable, but you like your face, you just look so young. Like we don't want to look like we have a child on TV giving the news. So I really had to like make up for it in my personality to make people believe in me that I can do this regardless of what I look like, how tall I am, regardless of that. So being on TV news for 6 years obviously helped me with the confidence. I got better at my job. I practiced being on camera every day. I messed up in the small markets where there wasn't a lot of people watching. So I got the practice. But then when it came to like starting my own business, the confidence kind of like really dipped down low again, because I'm like, this was never part of my plan. I never planned on being a business owner. Like this literally just like almost accidentally, forcibly happened to me. To help build my business within that first year and give me the confidence that like I can do this. First of all, I had to adapt to the mindset that like I have to make this work. I cannot go get another job. Like I have to do this. And so I was like, nobody is going to believe in me unless I believe in me. So I went to help build my business, help build my confidence. I joined a lot of different networking groups who were, run by a lot of other entrepreneurs. So even though they're not running the same type of business that I was, these are people who clearly have experience in what it is like to be an entrepreneur, and more specifically for myself, a solopreneur. So I learned like tactics, organization skills, like networking techniques that they were doing. I went to a ton of networking events. I joined co-working spaces, so Starting Block, 100 State, and then became a part of certain business accelerator programs. So I was just constantly surrounding myself by people who were where I needed to be, and just talked to them every day and surrounded myself with that environment, because I knew that if I just stayed at home and just did research on my computer for my industry, that's not going to work. But with that said, I still did my own research. I looked up on YouTube, like how other videographers who were freelancers, how they priced themselves, how they valued themselves, how they found their clients. So it was a mix of both in-person networking and business accelerator programs, as well as just doing my own research on YouTube. That gave me the confidence for that, because I had no idea what I was doing. So it really, really helped.
And it seems like we find mentors in all sorts of places, former employers, friends. It looks like this group, we're going to be mentors to each other. I mean, I love it. The comments are really vibrant. I'm not sure if everyone's following the chat, but make sure you are. There's some nice things chatting over there. We didn't get to ask really Stephanie or Deborah about your mentor-mentee relationships. Have you had any? Stephanie, tell me a little bit about that. Have you had some mentor-mentee relationships that you want to share?
Yeah, well, I guess I'd like to start with that at first I didn't. It was really hard starting in the construction industry, being one of the only women that I really saw, and not being familiar with the industry. I didn't really know who to go to or to ask questions. And so, I couldn't really find a mentor, even though I really needed one. And so what I found is by really just networking and getting to know people, and people love talking about themselves. So again, I'm going to go back to the asking questions and finding out what people do and how do they do stuff, especially when they're the experts of it. You can really see the pride that they take in their work, and that someone's interested in how they do things. And so I found some mentors through asking those questions and really getting to know people. And there were a few individuals. Actually, I had you know, for the longest time when I started, I was just that receptionist and I was asking the questions, but still, you know, they didn't have time to really do a whole lot with me. And then one individual kind of took me under his wing and, you know, said, hey, like, you know, let me really break things down for you. And it was just amazing because, you know, no one else seemed to have that time. And so, you know, I took full advantage of that, being able to check in and say, hey, can you look over this? You know, for the first time in my life, I had to write professional bid proposal letters. And I'm like, you know, I think I remember how to do that in high school, but like, you know, I was like, I'm not really sure if this is like, if they were right, you know, they told me in high school, but I don't know if this is real. And so, you know, going over what a professional bid proposal should look like, how, you know, what kind of language do you use? How do you sign off on it? How do you write a proper email? Those are like a lot of things, skills that they just don't teach you in high school. And so, you know, he really was able to help me move up like professionally and develop some of those skills. And then really like break down how the industry worked, what was the process to get a construction project going. And I was really grateful for that because I felt like a sponge. I was just soaking it all up. And then as I moved through my career, it just seems like, you know, at each organization I found other individuals within the company that was really able to kind of help mentor me. And then I, you know, as I grew further in my career, I did realize it was also important to get outside voices as well. And even though I'm kind of introverted, which it might seem like I'm not, saying I like asking questions, but really doing networking and going out and meeting, you know, I'm now a part of a women in construction group and being able to talk with other women that are like, yeah, something just like that happened to me. And, you know, being able to connect, okay, how did you work through that? It was really important. And then it was important to do it in different aspects. So not just construction, but also, you know, now I'm part of leadership groups as well, because there weren't a lot of women leaders. And so here I'm like trying to grasp like, okay, what women leaders do I know? And how do I keep excelling in my career so that I can keep growing and, you know, help my staff as well. You know, I want to keep growing individually. So
I love it. And I love that you actually, it sounds to me like you're becoming a mentor also, right? There's
yes,
a little bit of mentee, the teacher becomes the master and vice versa, or whatever that is.
exactly.
Deborah, how about you? What about mentors or mentees? Have you done any of that? And how do they play into your journey?
When I've probably been working longer than most of you, probably longer than some of you have been alive, but I started working decades ago and it wasn't easy. So I didn't have a lot of what I would call mentors. There weren't people necessarily willing to mentor me. So I let hard work and good work be my path towards movement. And that worked for me for many, many years. When I started my company, my most recent endeavor, though I knew it was going to be important for me to have people around me to learn from and to just be able to grow and be in places that I normally would not find myself in, because I'm very much an introvert. So the whole idea of reaching out to people and networking and all of that was just not something I wanted to do. But I forced myself to do it anyway. And I will tell you that the women's entrepreneurial market in Madison was great for me. There were women who I had never met who I would just call up or email and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Can you talk? Can we talk? And people would meet me for coffee, for lunch, for breakfast, for whatever, and tell me about what they were doing. I would tell them what I was doing. We'd exchange information and people connected me to other folks who connected me to other folks. It was like that one commercial, you tell two people, they tell two people, and so on and so on and so on. And that's how I grew my business. And it was really through the connections of women that helped me to expand and grow in Madison. So I would say whatever you do, if you're looking to do something entrepreneurial, definitely work your network and don't be afraid to get to know people on whatever medium, whether it is through social media or in person. make that happen, and then be willing to be that for somebody else. So I have intentionally made time for people who have been interested in DEI, who have been interested in entrepreneurship, who have been interested in corporate finance, whatever experience, music industry, whatever experience I've had, I've made time for people to share what it is that I know and connect them with resources that I have. So I think it is important to do, but I will say, not that men have not been helpful for me, because they have, but I really think for me, it was the women in the Madison business community that really supported what I was doing and what I continue to do today.
I love that. And that is my journey as well. As I just feel like Madison is very supportive of females, entrepreneurs, local business. So that's great, Deborah. I'm going to put you back on the spot, because one of the things that we want to talk about, and we're running short on time. We got about 10 minutes left for our discussion and then 10 minutes for questions. But I'd love for you to provide a little bit of that trends within your fields or trends in hiring. And so I think Deborah and Teresa, maybe both of you have some thoughts about this. We're looking, so what are some of the trends in hiring and promotions, and what can we do through this group to get them all polished and ready for their next big careers? And I'm going to throw a twist in this conversation too. When did you know it was time to move on? Right? So you're at a job, it's time to move. How do you know? How do you know it's really time? So there's this question of the person, how do they know when to move? And then tell us what's happening in trends and where people should be going. And we'll go with you, Deborah, because you're already unmuted.
All right. So for me, I have always been very upwardly mobile and oriented that way. So I've always had the stick and move mentality. So in my first 10 years of working at Motorola, I think I had 12 different jobs, because I was like, okay, I've learned what I need to know here. Let me move to the next thing. When I was at Abbott Labs, I was there for, I don't know, maybe 2 years, almost to the date. And I had 2 different jobs while I was there. I've just always been on the upwardly mobile mindset, because I had certain goals I was trying to achieve, and I didn't want it to take forever. So you just have to know yourself. For me, it was about learning. And so once I felt like I had learned something and I had taken up a notch the place where I currently was, so I left it better than I found it, then I was ready to move to the next thing. When it came to the career changes, which were significant for me, I really tried to follow my heart in what I wanted to do. I had always wanted to sing. I have sung my whole life, and I still sing to this day, but I wanted to record. So I researched, and I was like, okay, now's the time. We're going to make this happen. And so I had financial resources to be able to do that. My husband funded my first project, and I had a producer. I wrote some songs. I had some people who wrote songs for me, and just went out and made that happen. And I've never been afraid of the hard work that it takes to get into any particular industry. And I kind of have been fearless. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you all is a quote that has helped me, that has kind of shaped and guided my mentality around my career. And I actually named one of my companies after it. And it's 2 quotes. One is from William H. Murray, and it says, "Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness." And then it goes on, but then it says, "A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents, meetings, and material assistance, which no man could have dreamt would have come his way." And then the more popular part of this quote is from Wolfgang von Goethe, and he says, "Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now." So I actually named one of my companies Begin It Now, because I think you just have to start. You have to start somewhere. You don't have all the pieces together. You don't need everything perfect, but you do have to get out there and start, and you do have to commit. And that's just a choice you make. And for me, I just have always been the kind of person that once I decide to do it, I'm all in. And so I wanted to sing. So I said, okay, it's now or never. And I went ahead and did it, and did the research and did the work to make that happen, much like Jamie talked about and others of you have talked about. And then when I decided I was going to do the career transition thing, I wasn't sure about it. and didn't know if I was going to like it. But oddly enough, the satisfaction of helping someone get from point A to point B, get from a low point in their life of losing their job to being successful at finding a new career was really empowering for me. And then when I started my DEI work, being able to make an impact in individuals' lives as well as organizations was really very, very helpful for me. And I committed to that. I have committed to that, and it's been rewarding for me. So I would say self-assess. And when you understand that something isn't working, I wouldn't say leap in an uninformed way, but do the research and then find out what it takes for you to make the change and then make the change. When it comes to career changes, what I see from, and I look at it more through a DEI lens than just scanning the market of career change, but I see that there is a trend, which has been happening for the last 40 years, but a trend towards greater flexibility for employers as well as employees. So employees are wanting more flexible options, not just in terms of remote work versus in person, but in every way that you can think of it. There's a trend towards more of a gig economy for employees and employers. Employers that I work with are hiring more contractors who have a specialized skill. So if you have some skill that is in high demand, you can craft a career that works for your lifestyle. And for me, that's been crucial. I've never been one that liked to work 8 to 5 and only get 2 weeks vacation. And I've never done it. Even in my corporate structure, I've been able to craft what worked for me. There is a greater focus on hiring diversity of all kinds. And I would challenge you to expand your thinking on that beyond race and gender. People are hiring for culture add versus culture fit. And that culture add, again, can be whether you have a specialized skill, whether you bring something in terms of personality or ability to develop and advance. Organizations are looking for smart people who are able to take them to the next level. So even if you don't have a degree in engineering, as Stephanie has talked about this and others have talked about it, but you can shape and mold your skill set to be able to take an organization from point A to point B. So if you're smart and you're scrappy and you're willing to work hard, I think there's plenty of opportunity out there for you to craft the kind of career that you want. And because of the economy, because of what's happening in society, organizations are thinking differently about how people work, about how they hire and who they hire. And there's just a lot more, I think there's a lot more opportunity than there used to be. So I'll turn it over to Teresa.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. I think you're right. Flexibility seems to be the key these days. But Teresa, tell us more of the trends that you're seeing. And I did throw that other thing in there, like, how do you know when it's time to make a change? So if you could give us a little bit of insight on that, on both of those things. And you are muted, my friend.
Speaking of flexible work environments, my 3 boys, who you can probably tell from the beautiful artwork in the back, have been running around my upstairs. So I'm just trying to prevent y'all from hearing that. Yeah, I would echo your comments a lot, Deborah. I think employers that are going back to a fully on-site environment are really struggling right now, and they're going to continue to struggle, and they're going to continue to see attrition. And we'll see what happens, right? I think the pendulum swung so hard to remote work during COVID that it's now swinging in the other direction a bit, and it's become more of an employee, marketplace again, since more people are hiring again. And it'll continue to do that, right? We know the market continues, what goes up must come down. And so we're seeing a lot of employers trying to adapt to that, especially in those areas where the skill set's very hard to find. There's more demand than there is supply. Software developers, for example, where they're saying, okay, our policy is we're on site, but for that software developer, we're willing to let them work remotely. Not all employers are doing that, and we're going to see there's ramifications to both strategies, right? I think those employers that are having the best success hiring really talented people are those that are flexible and that do sort of come to a recruiting environment with a mindset of how can we gain the best talent, not how can we force the right people into this structure that we've already built. So we're seeing a lot of that. I think you know, the question you asked about when you know it's right to leave, that's probably the question I'm asked the most in talent acquisition and recruiting, because it's like, well, I mean, I'm not miserable. And like, I have a good boss and like, I'm pretty good at this. It brings me some joy, right? So it is really, really hard to know. And so the advice that I generally give is to sit down and write out, you know, if you were to start on a career search, what are your non-negotiables? What are the top 3 things that you would have to have in place before you would even consider making a move? And sometimes that exercise alone tells people, oh no, I'm going to stick it out. And sometimes it says, oh, these 3 things, none of these are in my current role. And I'm not going to be able to grow into either of those 3 things if I stay. So I think it's a really important self-reflection moment. And I don't think it has to happen by yourself. In fact, it shouldn't, right? Some of the mentors that we talked about before, colleagues that you trust explicitly. There are people, even your boss, if you have a really great relationship with your boss. I had that conversation at QTI. I was like, I love it here, but I just don't know where I can go next, right? We're a pretty small company. I am an expert at what I do. It brings me a ton of joy. And there was like this tiny little piece missing where I just wasn't scared enough, right? I didn't get that like once a month thrill of success because it had become kind of easy. And that's important, right? I didn't realize that about myself until I started out writing those non-negotiables. And when am I most joyful at work? And it was right after I was most terrified at work, right? So I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie perhaps, but it was a really good learning moment for me about, okay, now my next role, that's gonna need to be something that's intact, right? For me to consider this a really good job move for myself. So writing down that, you know, I'm obviously biased, but working with a recruiter or multiple recruiters that you trust who aren't, you know, going to badger you about every single job, but really who sort of want to get to know you so that you have a good understanding of what the market looks like, right? If I'm a project manager, for example, and I'm making 80K and I think I should be making 120K, maybe that's time to call a recruiter and say, hey, what are you seeing in the market? Some of the smartest candidates I'm working with are saying, who's hiring? What industries are going to be hot next year? Am I being paid fairly? Should I be asking for more, right? Because getting that outside perspective is really helpful. And people who are in talent acquisition, that's all we do. We're in it every day. So we can start to you know, support you with just what we're seeing from a data standpoint. So yeah, I mean, I think my advice is always to kind of keep your network tight during those moments, get support and help with your application materials. The number of poorly written resumes I see regularly is still shocking because y'all, like, the information is out there, right? Grab onto it, do your research. So put it beautifully, like, do the hard work, because without that part, you're not just going to get lucky. It's a lot of work, especially in a market where things are a little bit unsteady. Right now, we're also seeing employers who are unwilling to train and develop people. And I'm not saying that to be negative. They simply don't have the budget, right? A lot of those budgets were cut. A lot of L&D departments just don't exist anymore. So it's really on the employee to say, hey, this is the area that I want to work in, and this is what I need to do as a person to get there, right? No one's going to come and sort of hand it to you. You got to go find it.
Well, Teresa, Deborah, thank you for that really good advice and insight. We know you are experts in that field. Jamie and Stephanie, we're getting to the Q&A part. So I want to ask this question short to both of you. I think it's interesting. What's happening with AI in your future? So Jamie, why don't you go first? What do you think the impacts are of this artificial intelligence, or where it's coming, both in your current field and maybe your former job too? And then Stephanie, tell us what you think might happen in technology. Jamie, go ahead.
So AI scares the shit out of me, to be honest, because like with all the things that it is capable of doing and with how far technology has come, it really like freaks me out a little bit. But I mean, I think that it can be used in very, very helpful ways. Like, for example, I just attended a webinar on AI like last week because I really didn't know much about it. I haven't been one of those people that's really used like ChatGPT or anything AI related, but I just learned about it, and it's actually like if it's used in a good intentioned way, not a scary way, like it's really cool and it's very helpful, and it can definitely help with someone who is a solopreneur like me. I don't have employees, it's just me. So I'm doing everything on the back end as well as the work itself. So like, for example, like I hate doing social media. If I can stay off social media, I will. And so like coming up with social media posts, like last week, I opened up like ChatGPT and had their AI come up with social media posts for me. Like I just typed in directions for it and it typed up all these things that it just saved me so much time. And you don't even have to think. Like you just tell it like, write me a post about how to format videos for Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And then it gave me all the dimensions. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to research it. Like it just gave me a post and I posted it. And like it got a lot of way more views than anything that I could have come up with. So I think it's really cool. In terms of, I mean, there hasn't really been a lot of AI implemented into like video cameras themselves for my industry, but like for the editing process, like AI is being implemented into that, which saves a lot of time. So I think for, you know, businesses, not just my field, but a lot of them, it's just going to save people a lot of time, but it also could eliminate like a lot of jobs because it's doing stuff on its own that you don't even need. I don't even need a social media manager because I can just open up ChatGPT and it does it for me. And all I have to do is copy and paste. So that's where I see it going.
Interesting. Well, how about you, Stephanie? What's happening? Can the robots build a house? I don't know. What's going on?
We are getting pretty close there. There are a lot of new innovations happening. So especially with the 3D modeling and designing, AI has come in to really help allow us to kind of see what's happening before the building is built and developing, I guess, you know, a dimensional version of it online where all different trades can come together. And to kind of put it in retrospect, we used to build and then say, oh, this pipe is now in the way where I'm going to put this duct work. And now we're able to determine ahead of time, okay, we need to have it at a certain height. So it really eliminates a lot of problems that might have happened later on in the construction or the build of it, which is really exciting. There has been, you know, some different things where we use AI to help do the dimensions so we can do scanning, just to ensure that, you know, we're putting the correct sizes or layout. And then also being able to really utilize it to help us track, you know, some risks and what might happen. So with the database, as you know, when I was in construction management, we really put in you know, all of the things that were kind of coming up, the change orders, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of changes that happen in construction, but as long as you are tracking it in the future, this AI can say, hey, this happened before, you're kind of on track to be having the same problem now. Let's address this before it becomes a big issue. And especially in project management, you want to make sure that you're addressing it before the end of the project. So you're staying, you know, within budget and on time, very important. So it did help. It's been helping a lot with project management. I don't see it completely taking over. I've been seeing some different things being kind of tested out where we do have some robotics actually building different parts of construction. But you're never going to take away kind of the personal interaction, right? Because nothing in construction happens exactly like is planned. And so there's going to need those people in there to really help troubleshoot and really come up with some creative solutions, which again is why I love construction. We get to be creative every day.
Excellent. Well, Stephanie and Jamie and Teresa and Deborah, what a conversation we have had. We've talked a lot about curiosity. We've talked about, you know, if you got, it's kind of too easy, it's probably not for you, right? And we hard work, no fear, and confidence. These are all great things and themes that you've shared with us. I think our overarching piece, though, is always going to circle back to what brings you joy. Right? And how are these jobs connected to joy for you? We've got about 3 minutes for questions. I don't know if anyone in the group had a question that they wanted to ask. You could put it in the chat, you could raise your hand. If not, I thought maybe we could poke at Deborah for a minute and see if she'd sing us a little ditty.
Are there any questions? Let's answer that first.
I didn't see any questions.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead,
So
Alex.
what in your opinions, panel, what is one thing we should all be doing today, now, to craft our career? So what's one habit we can get into to help us to keep focusing on crafting, building the career that best fulfills us? If you can boil it down to one thing.
Anybody want to go first? Teresa or Deborah, you're unmuted. Jamie, Stephanie. Well, I've got an answer in the chat then. Want to just send you a chat while these ladies think of their answers. Ladies, who wants to speak?
I can speak. I think we said it so many times in the other responses, but oftentimes we were talking about our network, our mentors, right? So if you're feeling like a little bit isolated, which I think is one of those things we haven't talked about post-COVID, working remotely is beautiful. And it can also be very isolating if you're not in a role that forces you to interact with other people on a daily basis. So, as much as you can, try to be really proactive about joining common interest groups, whether that's professional development groups or whether that's something that's hobby. And so that you do have a little bit of, it's like an accountability piece. So like you got to show up to the thing because you're paying for the thing, right? And that makes you prioritize it. And then you will continue to build on your network. I've seen a lot of people struggle with that post-COVID of just like their network's kind of depleted. They haven't seen the people that they normally see because they're just not out and about going places.
Well, we've got about 40 people on this call. That was a great way to sort of network. It's not
Right.
the same though, right, Teresa? It's definitely not the same. Who else wants to answer Allison's questions? Any other thoughts or what's the one thing we should all, leave today and think about as we craft our careers?
I think you have to constantly upskill and not drive yourself crazy about it, but things that interest you, just upskill, and also document your successes. And so that whenever somebody asks you, or you have to update your LinkedIn or redo a resume or whatever, you're at the ready, what you do, what you do well, and you can talk about it confidently and intelligently. And because sometimes we forget, if we don't write it down or keep it somewhere, it's not top of mind. And we, especially as women, we don't like to toot our own horn. So documenting all of that, and as Teresa said, staying connected is just really important.
Excellent.
I will
Jamie?
add and say that if there are people within this group that are attended this because they are considering leaving their job or questioning it, have any kind of inclination on that at all, something that I ask myself even now, but also when I was working for somebody else is, and this might seem a little bit like stark, but it really like kind of brings you back down to earth and makes you like really question a lot of the things that you're doing is, I asked myself, if I were to die 15 minutes from now, am I happy with the choices that I made today? And it really helps me because like you truly do not know when your last moments on this earth will be. And I feel like a lot of us take that for granted. And so, thinking if you are in a job where you're working for somebody, am I getting paid what I feel like I am being valued at? Do I get to live the life that I want? Because one of the other things for me now that I am in this entrepreneurial space is that I could never go back to working for somebody again. Like I have to make this work because I don't believe in like what Deborah said, the 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. Like that is a system of being trapped. Like you work your entire life for somebody else, making somebody else's dreams come true, only to never be able to live your own. And you retire at 65, 70, however old you are. And then you only have like several years of life left. You're old, your life is coming to an end at that point, and you haven't lived any of your dreams. And like that to me is not what I am here to do. And so I would just say that if you are in a job where you feel like you can't take time off or you're missing things because you're serving somebody else and what somebody else wants you to do, that is not okay. And maybe I'm a little biased because I am in this entrepreneurial role and I understand that that path is not for everybody, but leaders need to do that as well. Like, if you would not work for you under those conditions, then you should not be subjecting your employees to that either.
Oh, JB, I love it. If you would not work for you. Yeah, if you would not work for you. Let's reevaluate that. Stephanie, we're running real short on time, but did you want to give an answer to this last question that Allison presented?
Yeah, I just have a real quick answer. So really what I do is when I have a goal or aspiration, I really make it intentional that before I make any plans or I make any decisions, I go back to what's my intention. Does this help me get to that goal? And sometimes, you need a visual. So put a picture of it up or put a word up somewhere on a board. And then on a weekly basis, I go and I check and I look at my schedule. Am I being strategic with my time? It's very easy for me. I'm very much of a yes person. I want to please everybody, but I've been a lot more intentional of going back and saying, this does not lead me to where I want to go. And so do I really need to follow through, or should I, change those plans? Or, when you are making the plans, think about that ahead of time and say, I'm sorry, I just really can't because right now I'm focused on this.
Well, Stephanie, those are some great final words. I want to thank all 4 of you for sharing your insights with us. Some very personal stories, some great advice, and some things to avoid. So thank you for sharing all of that. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. My time is done. I'd love to turn the meeting back over to Allison, and Allison will wrap things up for us for today. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, panelists. I'm Allison Cooley. I am co-chair with Amy Ackerman on the Personal and Professional Development Committee of Women United. And I have been keeping a laundry list of all the things I have, like Deborah, I started working when some of you may not have been even born, but I've picked up so many things. So I want us all, we're wrapping up at 10, but take a minute now, just write down or think about what are some of the key things that you want to take with you to be more determinant in our career, to craft the career that works for us, that will bring us joy, that will bring us satisfaction, whatever that looks like. What are some of these things that you can do starting at 10:01? So I'm just going to list some of the things that popped out to me. Write them down, whatever you want to do with them. Starting at the very first, being curious, always being curious and have the confidence to be curious. I love that. Taking on additional responsibilities. So seeing where there's something additional that you can do and not being afraid of doing that. What's the worst thing that can happen? You can learn, you can meet new people. So take on those additional responsibilities before you're asked. So seek them out proactively. Look at classes, certificates, advance your learning. That was a huge theme today, learning. I love what I think Stephanie said, finding the individual things in the job that match with your strengths and what brings you joy. She said she found art in construction. So even though she was in construction, she still found her art, which was important to her, within that. So finding the thing within it that in particular maybe harnesses your strengths or brings you joy. Look for what's not happening and make it happen. So look for what's not happening, find those gaps and proactively fill them again, instead of waiting for somebody else to find them. So look at what's not happening, what's not working, and find a way to make it happen. I love this. Someone said this, shocking others. So look for ways, like my mom is always kind of sitting on my shoulder. And sometimes I think about what can I do that would shock her, a job I could do or a role I could volunteer for, whatever. What would shock those people that say, really, should you be doing that? So I love that. I'm going to take that one with me. How can I shock somebody today? Finding a mentor, figuring out what is your angle. So what's the angle I'm going to bring to this? Finding something to love you back. I love that. Teaching what you know. That was a good nugget from Debbie. Learning, research is so important. Practice, that came from Jamie. Practicing. And even oh, Teresa, I think you said the meeting before the meeting. So practicing so that that boosts our confidence and that helps us to feel more confident and then come across more confidently. So practicing engaging others before the event, surrounding people who are where you want to be is another nugget I wrote in here. Document your successes. Deborah just said that. So everybody right now, oh, Kelly, don't work for free. Okay, so everybody that's got a nugget, stick it over in the chat. So throw it in there. I'll be really sad if we don't get people throwing stuff in there because I've got literally 15 things here. Losers quit when they fail. Winners fail until they succeed. Oh my gosh, Jamie, you always have the greatest little nuggets. I'm not seeing any more in there. Success is talent met with hard work. Love it, Teresa. I'm hoping that you all have something that you can take away with. If you want to continue this conversation, please consider joining Women United. We are an amazing, as Tiffany said, an amazing group of people. We are the women's affinity group, in my opinion, in Dane County. So if you want a mentor, if you've got more questions about folks and their careers, join us, attend more events. July 19th, so we have a concert on a rooftop event. September 15th, we've got our Women United brunch. Molly just stuck, now it's way up there. Molly, did you stick to Facebook, a link to the Facebook event? Molly Schumacher and Carly Friedel are our 2 United Way contact folks. I think she just did it. So take a look at what Molly just put into the chat. We would love to have you join us to continue the conversation or just to meet you. So thanks everyone for spending this hour and a half with us. Thanks again to our panelists. Thanks to Amy for facilitating, kicking us off. Thanks to Tiffany. We hope to see you again and good luck with your careers, everyone. I'd love to hear how this helped help you to craft that career that you want to craft. So have a great rest of your week, everyone.